Hello again, and welcome to another Dev Diary video for Will to Survive. This is actually going to be the last Dev Diary video for a while for Will to Survive, as we've recently announced that we're going to be starting a new project. For those of you who've been following us on things like Steam and Indie Database, you will have seen the announcement recently. Essentially, the kind of gist of it is that we're postponing Will to Survive for a little while we tackle a smaller project which is along very similar lines. All being well, this new project will help us fund Will to Survive and make it generally a better game in the long run. This development diary is actually going to be showing the new project running, as both of the projects are really closely linked. A lot of the source code is shared, so therefore what you see running here is really going to affect both games in the long run. Okay, so when we start a new game, you'll see that we've got some new artwork. This is not completely finished artwork. Obviously it's a little bit rough around the edges and it's not quite finished off and what have you, and it's a little bit sparse. I want to add a lot more interesting details and stuff like this, but it's kind of a guide to what the kind of future final art style will look like. One of the things that we've added recently is the portals, which are now in. Before, these used to be just kind of invisible interaction boxes, or they would show a little object, and they worked in the style of the old objects, and it wasn't that great, so I've improved them and we now use spine objects, which makes it much quicker to actually get these things in. And they also have like dedicated actual bounding boxes, so when you're clicking on this thing, he's not going to interact with it if he's not actually clicking on the space itself, the actual hitbox. So that's one of the things we've added, and obviously that'll transfer into Will to Survive along with some of the other elements. So it's worth noting the new game is very similar. So we've got the same interaction, and as you can see, we're currently using the Will to Survive artwork for the main character at the moment, as you've not got around to making any new artwork just yet. We've added a water bar at the top left because water is a very important thing in this new game, so that's going to get transferred over, and it'll affect things like accuracy and whatnot when you actually you get a bit dehydrated. You'll start to aim a bit more rubbish and things like that, and maybe react in a few ways that you wouldn't expect. I've added the button back in for inventory, which isn't so much of an issue in PC, as you can tab into the inventory, whereas touchscreen, obviously you need a button to be able to go in there. But one of the things that we've added with the new game is a very quick and makeshift map system. Essentially, this new game is a roguelike style game. It's very much along the lines of things like FTL and Binding of Isaac. So when you actually start the game, it will generate a random map for which you actually walk around in. And if we exit out the game and go back in, and go back into the map, you'll see that it's changed, and all that's randomly generated. There are a few bugs still, a couple of infinite loops. Hopefully none of that will happen while I'm demoing it, but yeah, it basically generates this random dungeon for you to investigate, and the kind of goal of the game is to escape this kind of catacomb cave style system. The first room that you start in, the entrance has actually been blocked off, and this is what causes you to have to delve deeper into the cave in order to escape. I'll talk about the map in a little bit, but you can see obviously it's randomly generated a different little portal there. So I'm going to walk into there, and you can see the new interface system working. Not all the rooms have got new artwork and what have you, but essentially when it generates this map, it generates a load of standard rooms that all follow this template at the moment, and a couple of special type rooms. So for those of you who play Binding of Isaac, you'll see the kind of similarities there. Now the contents of this room are actually randomly generated based on a couple of templates. So at the moment there's only 2 templates, and one of them is this one where you've got 2 pieces of cover and a bit of interaction to get some items and stuff, and there's another one which is slightly different. In the long run there'll be a lot more of these templates, which will make the randomization more interesting every time you walk into a room, and obviously enemies will be randomized, stuff like that. So the cover, obviously he doesn't interact with because it's cover. That's for use in combat situations, and the containers can be interacted with, though it's not currently generating any items at the moment. So the way that the game actually plays is, what you have to do is, there's an artifact that is used to unlock the end of the level. This may be broken up into a few different parts, but essentially you have to go throughout the world and find that, and then you can complete the level. Obviously as you progress on through the different levels, it's going to get increasingly harder, and you have to make sure that you've got enough water and that, you know, other enemies don't kill you while you're progressing. So if I go into this bottom room, which is quite handy, you can see the enemies at the moment don't change per room. Essentially we've just got 2 kind of placeholder enemies at the moment that don't really do much, and this is almost like an artifact stand. There's no artifact on it at the moment, it's just placeholder artwork that when you interact with it, it's no longer interactable because you've picked up the artifact, and that essentially means that you've got one of the artifacts and will be able to then progress on through the level once you get to the end. So I'm just going to check where I need to go. So I need to go across to there and then up around there. At the moment the levels are a little bit sparse and there's not any combat, so there's nothing too interesting to show at the moment. Obviously once combat gets in there, you'll start to see much more of a developed game. That's a crash. Okay, I'm gonna have to reboot this. Okay, so unfortunately the game just crashed. That's the unfortunate nature of development. We've still got a load of bugs that need ironing out, and from changing the way that portal interactions work and adding pathfinding and things like that, there's been a few things that create a few spanners in the works. So I will get around to showing you what happens again with this. All being well, we won't have another crash. I'll quickly walk through this level and I'll actually see if I can glitch it to make it a little bit faster. Sometimes we can glitch it at the moment and he just teleports to where he needs to go. So as I was saying, you essentially have to investigate the level and find artifacts like these in order to be able to complete the level. The map won't actually be displayed this way when you first start a level. You'll actually only see the room that you're in and the rooms that you know about that are next to it. So as you progress through the level, you'll actually be investigating and finding out whereabouts these things are, how many artifacts are in there. You might come across the boss room before you actually collect any relics, which means you've then got to go through the level and try and find all the relics. And you might find the relics early on, and then do you investigate the rest of the world, because it may give you a load of interesting items to take along with you, or it may just be added peril and give no real reward. So it's got those kind of very nice little roguelike style elements which make these games really quite fun. But essentially, once you've got the artifact, the boss room then has a new little entrance that you can put the artifact in, and essentially once you go through it, you then start in another level, which is again randomly generated. So that's the general gist of the new project, and as you can see, it's really kind of close to the way that Will to Survive worked, and obviously any improvements that we make to this new project will further feed into Will to Survive in the long run and make that a better game. But what it allows us to do is focus on the core exploration mechanics and fight mechanics, and release a game very soon to get into players' hands and get a bunch of feedback on it. And that's going to be really important, and all being well, hopefully will help fund further development of Will to Survive, so that we can get a bigger team and actually make that the game that we'd really like it to be. Okay, so the last thing that I just want to show as well, I just actually remembered it, is the combat UI that I've recently developed. I mentioned it in a previous update, and this all works on the new user interface system that's been improved based off the prototype. Essentially, at the moment, it doesn't really do anything. We don't have combat fully working, but I can show you roughly how it's gonna operate when you get to play with it. So essentially, you have an opening and a closing action every time that you perform your turn. Opening actions are things like drinking water, healing, moving to a position, shooting, reloading, throwing a grenade, or changing a weapon. Some of the actual actions are kind of just a one-off action. So like reloading a pistol, you just click reload and that's locked in and it's set, and then you can move on to the closing action. Others, like moving, you'll see slightly different icon, because what you have to do is you have to click somewhere to move, but once you've got something locked in, you can then do your closing action, which is ducking down to defend, remaining on kind of Overwatch, or kind of stood up ready to shoot, or evading if the square that you've managed to get to allows you to evade out of the fight. And once you've done that, you hit go, and then that would essentially play out that maneuver. The enemies would also play out a similar maneuver, and then it would loop back round and you would begin your turn all over again. All being well, Dan's looking at getting the patrolling and enemies in very soon. So once that's done, we can start looking at combat, and that's going to be quite fun to look at, because we can iterate really quickly on that and make sure it's something that's really fun. So I just wanted to show that. So that's all for this development update. As I say, this will be the last development update for Will to Survive, but the next development update will be for the new project, which is currently named Project Tunguska. And yeah, hopefully you understand the reasons for why we're kind of postponing the project, and why it's actually going to be quite a good thing in the long run for Will to Survive. It means that the project will be delayed, but the way that we see it is, it's better to have a delay to a project and eventually get that project into people's hands, than kind of struggle to make a really large project and inevitably maybe not manage to finish it off. Until next time, I've been Alex, and I will see you later.